World Heritage Convention and how it could be a uniquely important tool for protecting both natural and cultural heritage and fighting climate change. My name is Cyril Kormos. I'm the Executive Director of Wild Heritage, which is a small NGO based in Berkeley, California, a project of the Earth Island Institute. I'm also the IUCN WCPA Vice Chair for World Heritage. In the interests of time, I think I will quickly introduce our other panelists.
Cyril, one little thing. When you could you just share your screen again, because there's a black square at the bottom right of our image here, probably where you can see.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
All right, could you just turn off your screen sharing and turn it back on, please? Sorry for the interruption.
Yes. Okay. How's that?
It's still there.
Still there.
Did you optimize it for video sharing when you shared your screen? Was there an option that you enabled or disabled?
No, but I will try. There's no option there, unfortunately.
All right, that's all right. We can continue as you were. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Great. Okay, just starting again. So welcome to this virtual session. My name is Cyril Kormos. I'm the Executive Director of Wild Heritage, which is a small NGO based in Berkeley, California, and a project of Earth Island. That one of them was able to join despite some technical difficulties. I will introduce them. Maybe I'll do that right after I finish this talk. So I will start with just a few givens that we know, some baseline information. One is, of course, that climate change is accelerating, that we're in an existential crisis, that we are running out of time. And the first report of the assessment report, the first working group report of AR6, the sixth assessment report coming out of the IPCC, tells us, unfortunately, that we may have even less time than we thought just a year or two ago. We also know that biodiversity is in very rapid decline, and not something that we really need to explain to this audience, but species populations are crashing all over the world and extinctions are increasing. We also know that a critical mechanism for protecting biodiversity is recognizing rights and upholding rights around the world. That one of the most effective ways of achieving conservation is to do this, and it is urgently necessary both for protecting the biosphere and it's in its own right as a moral obligation. And another critical piece of information that is starting to get more attention recently is, of course, that the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis and of course, the rights crisis around the world are all interrelated, closely interrelated. In fact, in many cases, land use and climate change are the same issue. And the reason for that is twofold. One is because ecosystems contain vast amounts of carbon, more than enough to cause catastrophic warming if that carbon were to be emitted, and that's true regardless of what we do with fossil fuels. There is so much carbon in ecosystems that we could be off of fossil fuels and still heading quickly towards 1.5 degrees and catastrophic climate change because the numbers are so, the stocks are so enormous. And the continued clearing and degrading of ecosystems, the erosion of this carbon stock is a very significant cause of carbon dioxide emissions around the world. So the linkage is that ecosystems contain huge amounts of carbon, and that carbon is being emitted very quickly, which is a catastrophe. And B, because of this concept of ecosystem integrity, which I'll just mention very briefly, but the point here is that an ecosystem that has integrity, in other words, an ecosystem that still retains all of its plant and animal species, maximizes ecosystem services, including its carbon stocks, and also makes those carbon stocks the most resilient, the least vulnerable, the least risky carbon stocks. So ecosystem integrity is a critical strategy. Both protecting it where it still exists and restoring it where it doesn't is a critical strategy for fighting climate change. So the reason the World Heritage Convention could provide such an important mechanism for looking at all of these different issues holistically, how to address cultural, natural heritage, biodiversity protection, ecosystem integrity, and how to fight climate change, is one, that the convention is based around the concept of outstanding universal value. A World Heritage Site must have outstanding universal value in order to be listed on the World Heritage List. And integrity is embedded in that concept. So the World Heritage Convention has integrated within it a key concept that is found throughout the UN system, but that is really fundamental to addressing climate, biodiversity, and conservation in an integrated fashion. The other reason the convention is critical is that it protects many, many very large World Heritage sites. The World Heritage Convention, the World Heritage List only includes about 257 natural World Heritage sites, natural and mixed. But that totals almost 370 million hectares. So that's 8% of the total global protected areas estate, which is a fairly astonishing statistic. It's 257 natural sites out of about 230,000 protected areas globally. And yet, so that means that these World Heritage sites are very large. On the terrestrial side, they can be easily 3, 4, 5, 6, even in some cases 8 million hectares. And on the marine side, they are even larger. And we're seeing that the World Heritage Convention on a de facto basis is working at very large scales to start to protect continental scale corridors and very large protected areas. There's in the marine side, there's this very interesting case of the Eastern Tropical Pacific Seascape, where we see 3 or 4 different World Heritage sites across several different countries, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, protecting these sites together and integrating land-based conservation with marine conservation. I won't name all the sites, but you can see them there on the slide, and there's potential for an approach, a continental scale, World Heritage based approach on the terrestrial side as well. And this approach is also working in a way so that cultural values and rights are also protected, and there were several wonderful examples of that in 2018 with Chiribiquete in Colombia, Central Cijote Alin in Siberia, and Pimachuanaqui in Canada, all sites that had significant cultural components, all sites that worked to protect rights, and all sites that were very large and had very high ecosystem integrity. We're talking about here, just in 1 year, about 8 million hectares of new World Heritage sites. The question, of course, is how do we make the World Heritage Convention much more systematic so that things can unfold more quickly and in a more concerted, better planned fashion. And we've done a number of papers and research on the question of how the World Heritage Convention could engage in large land and seascape conservation, working with indigenous communities and local communities. And so that theoretical basis for what this approach would entail has been developed. And so now the question is, how can we plan for this systematically at national and regional scales? And that's what the next few presentations are about. One will be on the regional planning work we've done in the Himalayas with several partners. That will be presented by Sunita Chowdhury. But first we'll have a very interesting presentation on a very large landscape scale approach to World Heritage protection in Botswana, the attempt to extend the Okavango Delta World Heritage Site across Namibia and into Angola. Gertrude Matsiri will present that, and we will have a presentation from Bastian Bertsky on the potential for new World Heritage Sites in Africa. I should mention that we are also just starting a project funded by the Packard Foundation to look at global mapping of carbon stocks, biodiversity, indigenous lands, and community lands and World Heritage potential globally. So that is a fourth project, which is just starting. So we'll focus on these other three with Gertrude speaking next, if she was able to join us. Thank you very much for your attention. I do see that Gertrude is here. And I will pass it to you, Gertrude, if you are ready. I'll just do a quick introduction.
Yes, I'm ready, sir. You can go.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Gertrude. Gertrude is the Principal Curator for Archaeology and Heritage Management at the Botswana National Museum. She played a key role in the nomination of the Okavango Delta World Heritage Site, which was a historic nomination and inscription, the 1000th World Heritage Site inscribed a few years ago in Doha. And she is coordinating the steering committee for the transboundary extension of the Okavango Delta World Heritage Site, and she has an MPhil from the University of Cape Town in archaeology. So Gertrude will give us a quick overview of this very interesting plan for an expansion of the Okavango Delta across Namibia and up into the headwaters of the Kavango River in Angola, which is the source of the water for the Okavango Delta. So thank you very much, Gertrude, and over to you.
Thank you, Stella. Maybe you can share the presentation for me on the screen. Yeah.
Yes, let me see if I can pull that up. Okay. Can you see that?
Not yet. I can't see it now. Okay.
I'll stop sharing and open it again. How's that?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So just say next slide, and I'll forward the presentation.
Yes, I think as Cyril has said, hi colleagues, those who are present. I'll just give a brief presentation on the project that we are implementing, where we are planning for a transboundary expansion of the Okavango Delta into Namibia and Angola. Next slide. Yeah, so my presentation will just be brief, structured in those, just give an introduction and a background to the project and the key activities of the project and what we have achieved so far and the challenges that we are coming across. Next slide. Yes, I think it will just be a brief introduction. I think maybe a lot of you are aware of the Okavango Delta, that it's part of the Okavango River Basin. And it originates from the Angolan highlands, and then it passes through Namibia before it reaches Botswana, where it now ends up as the Okavango Delta, which is a World Heritage Site. As Cyril has said, it was inscribed in 2014 in Doha. The delta itself is also a Ramsar, is also a Ramsar site. So one of the important aspects of the delta of the Okavango River Basin is that it's important for its hydrology, the biodiversity, and the biological production. So you find that this river basin is a floodplain-driven system. that sustain the river in the dry season and store the flood waters downstream where it reaches the Okavango Delta. Next slide, please. So when we look at the project, probably I should just focus on the rationale behind the project and also the fact what the World Heritage Committee decision has in terms of the project. So if you look at the Okavango Delta, as I said, as part of the Okavango River Basin, the water that is in the Kubango is the one that sustains, the Okavango Delta World Heritage Site. So the transboundary water management of the river basin is very critical for the conservation of the Okavango Delta. And we realize that the riverine ecosystems and the people that are living in the river basin, and also some of the rivers that that is the one which is bringing water from the Angolan highlands, passing through Namibia as the Kavango and then getting into the Okavango Delta through the what we call the Okavango River. So that is something that prompted us to say, look, we need to expand this World Heritage Site, because without the proper management and protection of the whole river basin, and now the Okavango Delta will not be survive. So that is one of the rationale why we had to really look into this project, and the fact that the Kyoto and the water tower there in Angola is very critical, and also what happens in Namibia, the water is very critical for each to reach Botswana. And also the World Heritage Committee decision when the site was inscribed in 2014 and in 2018 when the state of conservation report was discussed, has made a recommendation that we need to monitor any potential impacts, including potential mining, which could impact water flow or the water quality in the delta, and also ensure that any proposed major developments within the Okavango River are subjected to EIAs, and also establish a coordinated mechanism to notify each state party of activities that might have transnational impacts. Of course, we do that, have that within the OCACOM, agreement, which the state party have signed in 1994. So it also encourages us to collaborate further, within the OCACOM structure. So based on those, I think then we saw the need really to sit down as the three state parties, to work on a project that could protect, the whole river basin. Next slide. So the project, as I said, it started, now we saw the need for that. And then during the World Heritage Convention meeting in Manama, that's where the three state parties met with IUCN to discuss the possible tripartite action plan for the protection of the basin. And they agreed to establish a steering committee that will lead the project. And Botswana was identified as the secretariat and the chair of the steering committee. So the committee, before that, I think we did have a meeting in June in Botswana that was hosted by the government of Botswana with the support of UNESCO, so that we can bring technical experts to discuss that. So one of the objectives of the meeting was to review the management of the Okavango River Basin and to assess the potential nomination of the Trans-Boundary Extension, and then to develop a roadmap from the Trans-Boundary Extension. So from that meeting, that's when we had a recommendation that we need a steering committee, to drive the process. Next slide. So the steering committee met for the first time in February 2020 in Botswana and Kasane. So the objectives of the meeting was to discuss and approve the terms of reference for the committee and to get updates from the state party and observer organizations and draw an action plan. Let me remind you that the composition of the steering committee includes 2 members from each state party. It includes also the World Heritage Center, African World Heritage Fund, the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area representatives, and the OCACOM, representatives who also provide guidance and support to the state parties. So during this meeting, we were able to approve the terms of reference and have an action plan, and the committee was established. And during that meeting, we also discussed the natural tentative list for Angola, which was very critical for the progress of the project. Next slide, please. So key activities of the project as per the action plan was that they need to have consultations at both political buy-in of the heads of states, the ministers, ambassadors, engaging of the leadership in the Kavango, especially in the area of Angola and Namibia, and then meeting with the different stakeholders and even local communities and other stakeholders. So this was now where we are able to consolidate the project so that we have a buy-in, both at the political level and also at the local level, and then conduct feasibility studies, which one of them will be the World Heritage Assessment and the social feasibility study, especially for Angola and Namibia, which they felt that they need to get to the local level and make that kind of study, and also conduct a strategic environmental assessment for the Kavango River Basin. And one of the other things was also now to do resource mobilization so that we can implement those activities. Next slide, please. So I'll just get into the achievements to say what we have done to date. We have had the meeting in 2020. We had an action plan that we had to implement, but due to challenges, of COVID-19, because immediately we had that physical meeting, we could not meet, but we managed to have virtual meetings. First, we had an informal one that we met just to, give us an update. And then we have a formal virtual meeting that we held in April. Since then, we have not been able to have any meeting, but we are hoping to have one soon. So that meeting in April provide updates from the member states and the members of the committee, how much they've done in terms of the action plan, and also to update the action plan because it was done since in 2020. And the action plan has been done. It's one of the the achievements is the one that is guiding implementations. Of course, we have held some consultations regarding the project. The parliament delegates of the 3 state parties met with the, guidance of the UNESCO World Heritage Office, to discuss level managed to that, and even brief our High Commissioner in Namibia on the project, and even our ministry leadership. Next slide, please. And then we have the development of the SIA is ongoing. Currently, it is at scoping phase. It is funded through the UNDP-GF program through the OCACOM Secretariat. So OCACOM managed to raise funds for the SIA, and it's an ongoing project. In June, we had the first meeting for the draft of the scoping phase, of course, although I missed the meeting, but I'm part of the, the technical reference team, and some of the members of IUCN are there. The feasibility study to do the World Heritage Assessment is ongoing. The UNESCO is funding this through the UNESCO Flanders Funds and Trust. And so far, they have managed to identify the lead international consultant and also the national consultant for Angola and Namibia. Next slide, please. And then we have already, Angola and Namibia, at the time when we met in Kasane in Botswana, they had identified potential sites for possible inclusion to the expansion. And Angola had identified 2 sites in those 2 provinces, and Namibia, the Mahango Wildlife Core Area, part of the Babata National Park. And this site in Namibia, it's a Ramsar site, it's already in their national World Heritage list. So Angola was still working on finalizing their national heritage list so that it can move forward with the project. But as we know that because we are doing the World Heritage assessment, it will determine as to whether these sites, are the right ones to include. Next slide, please. I think in terms of challenges, as we know, the COVID-19 restrictions, it has affected our process of consultation, both at national and regional level, and some of the activities that were planned, the meetings, but we have managed to have the virtual meetings. And we have had issues of staff turnover from from the 3 state parties, where we have frequent staff movements of the members of the committee. So we had to change, membership, so many times, and this has led to the delay in the implementation within the, the state parties themselves. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think that's the last part of the presentation. So The project is ongoing. I think we'll have a meeting to update in a few days' time, but that's how far I can go with the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gertrude. Very, very clear. I would propose that we continue on with the presentations and take questions at the end, just so we make sure we have enough time for Sunita and for Bastian. Sunita, if you're ready, I can pull up your presentation.
Hi, Cyril. Yes. Can you hear me well?
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up your presentation next.
Yeah, the not the PDF, but the other one would be great.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good? Can you see that?
Not yet. I can still see your email screen.
Okay, let me minimize that.
Yeah.
Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Not at my end, but if others can see, can you let us know?
Let me see. I will close.
Is Ruchir there?
Let me stop sharing and then open again.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see if that works.
Yeah, it's coming now.
Great.
Thanks to Ruchir. Thank you for setting that up.
Of experience on natural resources management in Australia, Austria, Cambodia, and the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. Welcome, Sunita, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Cyril, for the great introduction. And I would also like to thank you and Gertrude for setting the stage for me to proceed ahead at the regional scale. So good morning, good afternoon, and evening to all from across the world. So now from the global scale, I'll be taking you to the Hindu Kush Himalaya, where we'll briefly discuss on the potentials and opportunity on leveraging the World Heritage Convention in the Hindu Kush Himalaya in general, but also as well as with specific considerations on transboundary landscapes developed by 8 regional member countries of Hindu Kush Himalaya and facilitated by ICIMOD, which stands for International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Next slide, please. So here you can see the Hindu Kush Himalaya is the place where the earth really comes together and spanning across the regions, countries, different landscape, language, and of course the diverse people across the region. Next slide, please. So this, the map, the outer boundary of the map, this is the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, which is among the world's most important global resource. The HKH really sits at the peak of the world, and you can imagine it starts from 60 meters from the sea level and ends in the top of the mountain, the Mount Everest, which is like 8,848.86 meters from the sea level. So, and it expands across the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, from the west like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Nepal, Myanmar, and Pakistan. And ICIMOD is an intergovernmental organization, and we support and facilitate and help in collaboration with the countries. We govern the whole Hindu Kush Himalaya in the region. Next, please. So here you can really see how rich is the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, both in terms of culture and also terms of natural assets. So the region really hosts 4 global biodiversity hotspots in the region, across from east, in the far eastern Himalaya in Myanmar, up to the west in the Afghanistan, briefly touching to Tajikistan. This region also has the largest reserves of ice outside the polar region. And if you see this region, we have 55,000 plus glaciers, really trying to providing more than 6,000 cubic kilometer of fresh water. And they are the source of 10 major Asian river system, which is the lifeline of not only of the region, but beyond the region of Asia. At the same time, we have more than 1,000 plus culture and languages in the region, and you can imagine how these different cultures, different people are interacting with the diverse biodiversity in the region and shaping each other, our culture, our nature, and living in harmony with each other since millennium in the region. And that's why we have still been able to preserve and conserve, and the region is still extremely rich in biodiversity. And as of like 2019, we had 330 important bird areas and also a very key biodiversity area in the region. With having said this culture and natural assets are the lifeline of the people of the region. So saying that 240 million of the people directly depending on the resources from the region for their lives and livelihoods. But beyond that, around like 1.9 billion people really depend on HKS, the Hindu Kush Himalaya, for water, food, and energy, because the region really has more than 44,000 megawatt of energy supply in the region, which has been untapped unevenly. So, but really holds that potential. So it really shows that, like, if we see at the global scale, the region also provides a lot of indirect services. And we are confident to say that more than 35% of the world population directly and indirectly benefit from this Hindu Kush Himalaya assets. So that's why what happens in this region really affects, the other systems across the world. So that's why we have been arguing and this saying that the Hindu Kush Himalaya is the pulse of the planet, and we need to protect this diverse culture as well as the diverse natural assets. Next one, Sarah. So really to preserve this culture and natural assets, but also to generate data, because this this region is still data deficient region, and still there are so many research needs to be done where new research and new data should be found. That's why, considering this, the 8 regional member countries in facilitation with ICIMOD, we identified 4 transits along the vertical alliance and the six transboundary landscape along the horizontal landscape region. And out of these 6 transboundary landscape, 4 landscape are in operation, and we are working in this operationalized landscape, transboundary landscape, in collaboration with the respective governments. So if you can see up in the west, the first one in the Hindu HKPL, we say Hindu Kush Karakoram Pamir landscape. And that landscape spreads along 4 countries, 3 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China. But the ecosystem is so contiguous and touches also to Tajikistan. So Tajikistan is also on board to manage and conserve the landscape. We say HKPL. Then the second one is sacred landscape, and the Kailash sacred landscape, this one is spread across China, India, and Nepal. And you maybe remember that the Mount Kailash is the icon of this landscape, extremely rich in culture, spirituality, and also still underdeveloped, I would say wild, but also holds high potential of the conservation in this region. The third one is the Kanchenjunga landscape, and we are working in collaboration with China, India, Bhutan, and Nepal, and it is in the Eastern Himalaya region. And the last one here, you can see the fourth one is down in Myanmar, India, and China, the far eastern Himalaya region, where we say High Life Landscape Initiative for the far eastern Himalaya. And if you see, these landscapes are extremely rich with outstanding universal values. That's why we are trying our best to conserve, but also manage, sustain the resources for people in the region and beyond the region at the global scale. Next one, please. But somehow this, in spite of this cultural diversity and also the natural diversity, the role, the convention, the World Heritage Convention is undermined. The potential has not been explored in this region. We still think that there can be so many things to be done to conserve these outstanding universal values. But this convention has not been well leveraged in the region. That's why in 2019 we had a regional workshop, Wild Heritage, IUCN, ICIMOD, and with generous funding from the National Geographic Society, we had a workshop on leveraging the World Heritage Convention for transboundary conservation in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. The major objectives of this workshop was to really brief about the World Heritage Convention process, because many of the stakeholders didn't know about the process, how to go ahead with the convention, but also at the same time identify the gaps, why the region, in spite of being rich, has not been able to tap the potential, and also at the same time recommend how to go ahead really to tap the opportunities and the potential of the convention in the region. Next one, please. So in this workshop, we really had a very good participation. We had participation of the respective governments of the regional member countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, which are also the state members of the World Heritage Convention. But beside that, we also had the participation of government of Tajikistan, which shares and contributes, and they are on board with the managing and the governing of HKPL landscape. But beside that, we also had opportunity to get the feedback, contribution, and inputs from different NGOs, local NGOs, INGOs, civil society representatives, the local leader from the very grass-grounded situation. We had academia, donors, and multilateral organizations like UNESCO and private sector came together. We had a very intensive workshops for 2 days where we really sat together, identified, and also did the SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, threat, and opportunity to go ahead as a roadmap. So based on this, next slide, please, sir. So based on this, we have Tillman Eager, who has not been able to join us today. So we have together developed a report, which is one of the major outcome of this project, which really gives an overview of the regional setting from the conservation perspective, but also identifies the broad graphs. What are the broad graphs that have not been reflected in the convention, and also provides the list which can be inscribed in the World Heritage Sites, but also highlights some of the gaps, opportunities, along with the inscribed World Heritage property, as well as the natural candidate sites on the World Heritage properties. And with this, the report really comes with some very concrete conclusions and recommendations how to go ahead. So based on this report is almost there. So we are in the layout process, and we really hope this will come out soon, and then we can share with the public. So this has been a long due work, and we really hope to proceed ahead with this. So based on this, we will provide, I'll brief about the recommendations, the key recommendations that comes out from this report. Next. So here in the report, what we just try to revisit some natural World Heritage site in the region. As I already explained, it's extremely rich with so many universal values. But in spite of these, we just have 17 World Heritage sites, and those are not only natural. Those are like only 8 of them are natural, 7 are culture, and 1 mixed heritage sites, which really shows the region has extremely lower part of the Western Himalaya and the upper part, they do not have a World Heritage site in spite of the extremely natural assets in the region. That's why we are saying there is very uneven distribution of heritage sites across the region. And also, if you can see, the region is very dynamic and changing now and then in terms of geology and also other social soil properties. But in spite of this, there is not even a single properties inscribed on the geological values, which needs a very broad attention. And also none of the areas are transboundary in the nature, though we are already around like a few decades with the convention, but still the transboundary World Heritage site is missing. And that's how we are trying to see how we can have the transboundary landscape and World Heritage Convention in the region. We also analyzed the tentative sites, so it shows that currently there are 11 natural World Heritage sites within the HKH under discussion, and there are 5 natural heritage sites in Tajikistan. So this is the second map you can see. So yeah, so one of the major criteria for the natural heritage sites you can see is the biodiversity criteria. So we were trying to analyze how we can have the evidence based, we can have evidence to reflect in the report. So as already said, we have 4 global biodiversity hotspots, but we did again analysis of the protected areas over the last century. And as of like recent 2020 in December, we have 554 protected areas as per World Database on Protected Areas, WDPA, which is like extreme in this region is very highly demanded for development. So you still, in spite of that, we have high number of protected areas. And we also have 200 global ecoregions, which are spread across. So here you can see in the first map, these the green ones are the protected areas, and the colorful, these are the 12 global ecoregions. Besides that, in the second map, you can see 348 key biodiversity areas, and we also analyze the important 56 important plant areas are being hosted by the region. Next one, please. So the report really recommends, has the 6 recommendations along with the broad gaps. The first one, the report really recommends to revisit the existing World Heritage sites, which were inscribed like a few decades ago, but needs to be revisited. So second one is specific consideration to the contiguous or serial extension, because there are some key ecosystem, the key ecoregions which expands, which cross the boundaries like for in China and Myanmar, but they are still not considered well for a World Heritage Convention. So that's why we want to have a specific consideration to such ecosystem. The third one is the World Heritage Convention and the ISIMO transboundary landscape. The map which shows the 4 operational landscape, we're really trying to see and how these two can come together, like how the transboundary landscape can be well reflected, can leverage the World Convention in this landscape. The fourth one is consider the broad gaps that has been reflected in the report while revisiting the tentative list or World Heritage Sites. So in the broad gaps, we have really said that in spite of being key diversity areas, those areas have not been reflected in the convention or the World Heritage List. And the fifth one is the very detailed thematic study on the geoheritage, which holds a really high potential in the region. And the sixth one is the consider the sites for new nomination or even the extension, like Sagarmatha National Park extends with the other, and the Kanchenjunga, the recently declared reserve is across in the Kanchenjunga landscape. So we are thinking how we can do that, and the report really reflects on that. The last one, please. Yes, so thank you for listening to me, and happy to respond to any queries you have. Thank you so much. Back to you, Cyril.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I think we will go straight to Bastien as we're running out of time, unfortunately. Bastien, are you there? Can you go ahead and share your screen while I introduce you?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Let me quickly introduce you. Bastian Bertsky is a conservation biologist and currently works at the European Commission's Joint Research Center in the EU-funded Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management Program, BioPAMA. Since 2005, Bastian has supported World Heritage work in various roles in IUCN, WCPA, and UNEP WCMC, and he is a co-author of the recent report, Natural World Heritage in Africa. So thank you very much, Bastien. And if you can quickly give us some thoughts on the report and its conclusions, that would be very helpful.
Sure. Can you see the first slide? Is that okay? The title slide?
Yes.
Thanks, Cyril. Okay, I'll go quickly. So talking about natural world heritage in Africa now, why from the BioPAMA program do we support this? BioPAMA supports African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, in fact, 79 countries with over 9,000 protected areas in improving management and governance of protected and conserved areas. And of course, World Heritage is World Heritage sites are the crown jewels of nature, if you like, and the pinnacle of the protected area estate also across these countries. And therefore, we also engage with those sites and also try to provide guidance on the protection and management of these sites. We recognize the many benefits that World Heritage listing can have. I've summarized them here, but I will not go into detail now given the timing. And we also recognize, of course, in BioPAMA, the great natural assets in the three regions, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific. And now I will focus on the African region, where we have 8 terrestrial biodiversity hotspots. We have large rainforest areas. We have these exceptional savanna ecosystems with megafauna assemblages and migrations. We also have a unique diversity of freshwater and coastal and marine ecosystems, and many, in fact, areas that are both biodiversity and carbon hotspots, such as tropical lowland forests, mountain forests, peatlands, and seagrass meadows. And one of the purposes of the study that I will talk about in a minute is actually the question, how well are these different assets represented on the World Heritage List already, and what kind of potential still exists for extensions, but also new nominations, very much the same as in the Himalayas. So BioPAMA commissioned this recent synthesis report, which was launched last year, and the report basically provides an introduction to World Heritage, an overview of the existing sites in Africa and their status, and then also a synthesis of priorities for new nominations and extensions of existing sites across the continent. We also concluded with some very practical advice on preparing nominations, which is often critical to help countries to actually come forward with good nominations, and lots of useful resources. Looking at the map of Africa, and we covered the whole continent, not just the UNESCO region of Africa, which excludes the northern African countries, but we looked at the whole continent and we mapped the existing sites. And here I just highlighted some of those sites that are very large, that is over 10,000 square blue and green carbon. Let's say Banque d'Arguin National Park is recognized for its extensive seagrass marshes and tidal marshes and seagrass meadows, which are very important blue carbon stocks. And then also we have, of course, the tropical forest sites, including Okapi Wildlife Reserve, Salonga National Park, that host major rainforest areas and therefore also carbon stocks. Now, the latest addition, and that was not included in the report, I should note, was Ivindo National Park, another big, largely intact rainforest site of almost 300,000 hectares that was inscribed only this year in July under biodiversity criteria 9 and 10, and includes very important old growth forests and rivers of high conservation value. So this site is not included in the statistics you will see in the following slides. We looked at the evolution of the African World Heritage Network over time, and if I say World Heritage, I mean natural mixed sites here, and we realized that although there are 48 sites already on the continent, now 49, relatively to the rest of the world, the network has evolved slower in Africa, and there's still potential for more sites there, whereas in other parts of the region, including Europe and North America, more sites were added in recent years and decades. Looking specifically at the characteristics, the major characteristics, major types of sites we have in Africa, it's actually interesting to see that we have roughly the same number of tropical forest sites and tropical savanna sites. We also have a relatively large number of freshwater lakes and river sites, and also mountain sites, and relatively fewer marine coastal sites so far on the continent. Now, if we look at the application of the 4 natural World Heritage criteria across these sites, we see that in Africa, compared to the rest of the world, there is an overrepresentation of so-called biodiversity or species-dominated criterion 10 sites. And in a way, that's a good sign, because I think a lot of the core values in Africa, natural values, really, they are about biodiversity, about threatened species, about endemic species, and that is well recognized on the World Heritage list. And then another very interesting finding is that if we look at the size distribution of terrestrial sites on the continent compared to the rest of the world, we find, and this is something I mentioned earlier already, that we have a very large number of large and very large sites compared to the rest of the world. And that reinforces this message that Africa is incredibly important for conserving large, intact ecosystems, not only forests, but forest, savanna, other systems, freshwater systems, as the Okavango Delta, as we heard, and there's even scope for more of these large and very large sites in Africa. On the other hand, however, also as recognized through IUCN's World Heritage Outlook assessments, and we looked at the 2017 one, the most recent published at the time of our analysis, but there's an even newer one now from last year, that unfortunately in Africa also the sites tend to be overall having a less positive conservation outlook. There are more sites in a critical state with a critical outlook than in the rest of the world, and fewer sites that have a good conservation outlook. And that's certainly a big challenge across many African countries, where the status of the sites and the outlook of the sites is not as desired. Now, in the report, we identified 4 major priorities. I've rephrased them here slightly, but one certainly is enhance the management and governance and collaboration with indigenous peoples and local communities in existing sites. And that includes sustainable financing, sustainable use, and benefit sharing as important issues that need to be revisited. Secondly, of course, you need to protect the existing sites against increasing pressures, and that doesn't work always very well. And we have seen some examples at the recent World Heritage Committee, where we had big dams basically being approved by the World Heritage Committee, or we had additional threats from mining, from new roads, and so on, being recognized across multiple sites in Africa. Thirdly, there are certainly opportunities, similarly to High Asia, for consolidating and extending existing sites, using ecosystem approaches and promoting ecological connectivity and resilience. And then there's also, fourthly, the opportunity to propose new nominations, including transboundary, transnational sites, serial sites, mixed sites that recognize also the very rich cultural heritage of Africa, to achieve a more representative, balanced, and credible World Heritage list in Africa. How are we doing for time, Cyril?
I think we're just about there, unfortunately.
Okay, well, here's just the maps, highlighting some of these possible priorities for new biodiversity sites. It's all in the report. I encourage you to download the report, and I should maybe then just highlight that in BioPharma we have moved on, and we are now working on a similar study for the Pacific region and hope to also complete one for the Caribbean region, which are all also regions that are very important for biodiversity, but largely underrepresented on the World Heritage List. Let me finish there then.
Thank you very much, Bastian. We'll wrap it up. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but thank you very, very much to all our speakers. We tried to demonstrate today that we really need large landscape and seascape conservation and indigenous-led conservation and community-led conservation around the world if we are going to extricate ourselves from a catastrophic crisis in terms of climate and biodiversity. And we believe the World Heritage Convention, if it functions as it is intended to, can provide a uniquely important mechanism because it really addresses ecosystem integrity, it addresses very large sites, it addresses nature and culture together, and is the only international instrument to do so. And it's a mechanism that was specifically designed to address and reduce threat. So thank you again very, very much to our speakers. This was wonderful. And the work continues. So please don't hesitate to be in touch with any of us if you have further questions or comments. And thank you again.
Cyril, may I jump in to just thank you very much, Clemens Cooper from the... Okay, they cannot hear me anymore. Well, just to thank the panel and greetings from Marseille. You've had full house here. Thank you very much for this great session and for having delivered that on time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.